Welcome to Celestial You. Hey guys, it's springtime. Happy New Year to the Persians out there. Hamburger. I just love spring so much because every year we're renewed, but also because, it's eclipse season. Things are gonna get spicy. I'm so excited today because we actually have some pretty spicy eclipses happening. I don't know if you've been watching the news, but at least for the solar eclipse that's happening on the 8th in the US, it is crossing over some cities called Nineveh, which has caused quite a stir because people are basically saying this is biblical. Well, I'm going to tell you what it really is. It's probably not biblical, but it's definitely cosmic. So stay tuned. We're going to talk about the lunar eclipse on March 25th in the US, and we're going to talk about the solar eclipse, which is April 8th. And I'm going to give you the scoop. So we'll talk about what's happening politically from the US chart, and then we'll also talk about what's happening globally within the Yamakoti prediction, or the world prediction, from an inner point of view. Okay, so we're first going to start talking about the lunar eclipse in the US on March 25th. And that's a Monday in the US. And during a lunar eclipse, what happens is the Earth casts its shadow on the moon. And typically that would be a full moon, but during the eclipse, the light of the sun doesn't actually shine onto the moon. So esoterically, what this tells us is what is going to happen. It sets the tone emotionally for revelations, things to purge out, just like the full moon does. Revelations of emotions, revelations of thought, things coming to a head over the next 6 months. So think of this as things coming ahead over the next 6 months for the US. And just so you know, the effects of this could be felt a month before. So many of you are already feeling the effects of this. A month before, a month after are the major changes, but also this sets the tone for the next 6 months. So what we actually see here is an eclipse with a Capricorn ascending or Lagna sign. We see that Capricorn, ruled by Saturn, is in the second house. So a lot of this for the US has to do with the economic situation in the US. Now this is going to be a contentious change that occurs, right? And it's the economy is being kind of like rethought during this eclipse. What's happening is people are becoming aware that the American dream is financially not solvent. It's not a dream that we've had a lot of illusions. We've been told a lot of governmental lies, but there's this reckoning that happens with this eclipse where we are starting to, and you would have probably felt this about a month ago, kick in, where people are starting to understand that the American dream is not a viable dream. This is Saturn being in the second house with Mars is really evoking a change. Venus is also there. So this is all about stability, security, our long-term goals as a country. And we also see here that Neptune is there in this second house. So it's actually causing us to think more globally about or from a higher standpoint about economies. And at the same time, Jupiter is also aspecting the Lagna in a trine. So there's this feeling of we want more stability. The populace is actually asking for stability in terms of their real estate holdings, land, changes to currency, lots of scrutiny over the government, where people are shifting towards wanting concrete investments. And there's an idea that we don't want our money to be going to the government anymore here, because Pisces is actually the government, but there's Mars and Saturn is a hot and cold energy. It's the energy of change whenever they're conjoined, and they are conjoined within the second house here, which rules sort of the identity of this eclipse. So there's this big tumult against the fact that people don't want to pay taxes anymore, and the government is mismanaging their funds, and it's becoming more and more obvious. This is because for a while now we've had Saturn in Pisces exposing a lot of lies within secret institutions, things like that. And so now we have Mars joining the party, and Mars is essentially saying there's got to be some change here. So I will say for the US, that's coming across as a change in our governments. A change. There's also this Pluto being in the second house of Aquarius. That's a change towards cryptocurrencies, or the idea that over the next 6 months, a lot of things will become different in terms of innovation, but it'll be in the way in which we hold assets. People are looking for changes in banking. People are finding out that banks are also need to be revamped, that there are some unscrupulous activities going on in the banking sector and with government banking, possibly even the Fed, things like that. So as well, with the actual eclipse, where it's lying in Libra. The moon is in Libra and the sun is in Aries. So it's along the Libra-Aries axis. Now, there will be continued scrutiny with Mercury also joining the sun in Aries on the opposite end of this eclipse. And so this has to do in the third house with communications. It has to do with Mercury with legal battles also. And it has to do with I think a continued struggle with censorship, and the censorship being performed. There's like legalities, and that whole issue with censorship, and also Mercury is borders. So this is all happening in Aries, and that's a fight, basically. That's changes. That's, contention, especially with Mars being with Saturn. I think we're definitely going to see the southern border politically escalate and really question the identity of our politics in terms of the identity of our nation. That's actually what's happening during this eclipse. Now, it's in Libra in the 9th house, so this is all political. It's like people want just politics. Political realizations are happening, and relations with other countries, because the moon also rules Cancer in the 7th in this chart. And we see that it's creating more harmony or more justice with our alliances with other nations is becoming realized, or becoming, I guess, at odds with our national identity. So I think if you break this down, what this actually means is that our governments are kind of making policy decisions that counter the identity of America. And there'll be a lot of discussion about this. People are up in arms about this. And it will lead to things like secession, Texas's secession, or trying to emancipate from the rest of the U.S. I know that's crazy, but it's definitely in the chart to cause those types of discussions, at least the desire to emancipate. One more thing I wanted to add to this is that we will be seeing this issue with the U.S. not having good leadership. There's actually a lot of leaders that are either dying, stepping down, elderly that are aging out. And then there's also this contention in the nation. So there'll be a lot more communication about that over the next 6 months. And that's going to very much be at the forefront of American politics. And because this is about politics, but not in the sense of politics being this remote thing, but in the sense that politics is now affecting our money as Americans, and we've kind of figured that out, and we're going to be figuring that out more in the next 6 months. So that's that part. And so for the personal part of this reading, I like to leverage the Yamakoti world point to get an idea of what's happening in unity consciousness. So from a personal perspective, the Lagna of this chart is actually in Libra. Now, Libra is the sign of relationships. So I see us as a world focusing on our identity within relationships. Now, this is a reevaluation of that because there's revelations happening on a global scale with regard to not only relationships, but also our careers, the way in which are things fair? Are we getting a fair deal? So all of what's happening on a personal level for the world is that we are weighing and measuring our relationships against whether they are fair. And that's because the moon is in Libra, the sun is in Aries. Aries is our identity and what we want, and Libra is the other person. Now, also as a part of this eclipse, we have Mercury at 23 degrees. The eclipse itself is happening at 5 degrees along the axis. But we're definitely going to see a shakeup here. Now, who's going to see a shakeup? Because if you have placements in either Libra or Aries, this is going to affect you deeply. I'm a Libra rising. If you're either a Libra rising, Aries rising, sun, moon, any of that, or even the other planets, you can know how this is going to affect you. The closer your planetary positions are to the 5th degree, it's going to affect you much more. So pay attention to that if you have those placements. Now, the main theme is personal and business relationships, how we relate to what we call a fair deal. And the reason why the deal is coming up is because Mercury itself is a deal maker. It's the trade relations planet. It's the business planet, right? So a lot of this is going to change how we feel about our careers, but also whether our personal relationships are giving us a fair deal. Some people, because the Aries is ruled by Mars, and Mars is next to Saturn in this chart, it's in the 6th house, some people are going to be going through divorces or initiating legal proceedings to change their relationships. Now, why is that? Because actually Venus is right there in that same house with Mars, Saturn in the 6th house. And 6th house is contracts, conflicts, these kinds of proceedings. So you can see that this can initiate contractual changes with either businesses or with relationships, actually. And this is on a global scale. This can personally affect your life, especially if you are within those signs. Now, for those of you who this is affecting you personally, you might actually see a situation where you're changing your idea of what a relationship means to you and the way you're going to look at it, because there's so much sixth house action being incorporated into this. And it comes by way of Aries, okay? And Aries is your identity, and it's taking action. And so the sixth house is it seems to say, I want to make sure my relationships actually serve my daily needs. Are those people really there for me? Are they showing up in practical ways long term? Because in Pisces, that's not often the case. Pisces is often about illusions. This shatters the illusions during this 6-month period, where you start to understand this is not good for me long term, because they're not really there for me, or they really are. Some people will realize how good they have it because this person, they're with a ride or die chick or a ride or die guy, right? So that's going to be a revelation to you, like, oh wow, this person's really grounded. At a time where things are really perhaps long term, you've got a lot of unknowns, this can tend to ground you. If it doesn't, things like those relationships might just fall away. They're not going to fall away on their own. They're probably going to need some sort of action on your part to change those relationships. Now, additionally, this all has to do with mental health, because those planets are also in Pisces, which is mental health, right? It's the way we heal ourselves, the way we rest. And if you can structure your life to rest, if your relationships provide you with a safe space to rest, then they will persist in your life long term. If they serve your higher self, your higher needs, your higher mind, then they're going to persist through this 6-month period. If they don't, they're going to go. And that's what's right. That's what's real. Okay, in addition, when we're looking at what's happening globally, this is hitting our global identity. We're talking about health issues globally, legal issues globally, because Libra is the scales of justice. And we're looking at the governments globally. Like, how are the governments affecting our daily lives, and do we not like it? Because this lunar eclipse is going to be empowering. It's going to tell us that we need to understand how governmental policies affect our health, the toxins we're exposed to, all of those pieces that might make life more difficult. In addition to this, many people with chronic addictions or mental issues will now see a way forward through daily dedication to their mental health. That's right. Over the next 6 months, you can make incremental changes that will push you forward. And that is through not allowing your relationships to take center stage, but really front-loading your mental health over all else. Because it's not about the other. Yes, the revelation in this lunar eclipse is our relationships. But it's the relationship to self which is being changed. It's like, if I can just focus on my mental health, and if I'm happy, if I'm free from suffering, if I'm not addicted to substances, then I can actually make the incremental daily dedicated changes, the organization I need that will then make me a good partner to someone else, make me a good business partner. And that's the way this is going to work. Some of you will see changes in even career that kind of supports this structure. Many of you will see relationships delayed because they just don't serve your practical needs. So they need to go on the back burner. A lot is happening personally over the next 6 months, but some of these issues you will have been contemplating from a month ago. And this will continue for you, for all of us. Okay, and now we're going to switch over to the solar eclipse, the Great American Eclipse as they're calling it, that is actually visible in the US this time. I actually have a friend who's going to Texas to go view the eclipse, which I think is pretty cool. But if you do have a chance to see this eclipse, it's a sentinel event. However, if you don't have a chance to see it or be along the path of the eclipse, you will still feel the effects for this next 6 months. So from a U.S. political perspective or the U.S. Geopolitically, what we see in this solar eclipse is it's all about identity. So this is about Leo. Okay, so Leo is the Lagna or the ascendant. And it's actually happening in the sign of Aries. Okay, so this is all about fire energy. What is this kingdom we have? And actually the eclipse itself, the solar eclipse, the new moon eclipse, right? It's happening at the 19th degree of Aries. Mercury is there. Venus is there. Okay, it's packed. It's a packed house of Aries energy, which means it's all about identity. And this is in the 9th house, so political identity. This is huge. We are going to have such a breakthrough in the nation's politics. Really, the debate is, who are we as a nation? You know, I love that they're calling this the Great American Eclipse because it truly is. I was sort of doubting the narrative when all that came out. Now I'm like, go ahead, guys, go look into this. This is awesome. Normally, when there is an eclipse, we tell you that the energy is frenetic and not to engage heavily. But there's something so sentinel about this solar eclipse. It's so grounded in what we think is good, right? Because the 9th house is good deeds, but it also is our philosophy. And Aries is ruled by Mars. Mars is in the 8th house. So this is a really big deal because it's about us fighting. Like, this is almost a mini, I don't want to say this, but it's almost a mini civil war. It's where it's an ideological uprising. It's a battle over sovereignty. And 8th house is lies, it's deception, it's corporate greed, it's all of those things that have been happening in secret because all of that it's happening in Pisces in this chart. And so Pisces is ruled, by Jupiter, and Jupiter's been in Taurus for the longest time. Okay, so we've been kind of used to this idea that banking is changing, crypto is changing, our assets are changing. But in this house, Jupiter is actually in the 10th house. This is the way forward. What are these changes going to elicit? Also, I will say Jupiter rules the 5th house here, and that's investments and speculative gains. There's so much change that needs to happen. Eighth house being corporations. This is a huge turning point for our society to wake up to the lies of government, the greed, right? And we're reaching a boiling point. We're setting a new tone. This eclipse is, so much of it is getting rid of the way that we think about America long term. Because if we can get rid of the problems, the corruptions, the wars, right? Pisces wants peace, but we have wars instead, right? The American populace is like, what is good? I want to know what's good. I want to know what my policies are doing, because they need to support my identity as an American, right? All of that is in question here. Borders are in question. The borders of the United States. Are we going to be united? Because this is all in question. This is really, honestly, all about the politics of this country, and not just politics as some remote thing, but politics in the way in which it changes our future. The ninth house is the future, you guys. This is fire energy. So there's also, this eclipse does trine Leo, and Mercury is involved. So it asks us to prompt the question of whether the lifestyle of this country is one which gives us a fair share. Are we getting a fair share in this country? Do we have an American dream? That is what we are asking. And it looks like the answer is no by this chart. And so there's an awakening to that. There's a realization that we want emancipation. This is a really exciting eclipse, I have to say. Ideologically, spiritually, yet even though the references to Nineveh, if you go look at the Great Amercian Eclipse and where it's happening on a bunch of towns called Nineveh, which is a biblical reference. But actually, what's truly happening is that the lies baked into our religions are now being exposed. So this actually takes place with Neptune there. Neptune is the higher self. It's the breakdown of the lies of biblical proportion, right? This idea that a savior from outside of ourselves is going to come and that's what's going to happen. That's actually not what's happening. The tone of this eclipse says that this is a you change because it's an Aries change. Okay, and Aries is change, and we are in spring, and this is the time, and the time for us to really think about what our philosophies are, really think about the relationships and friendships and goals that are going to get us psychologically well, that are going to heal us as a nation. All of this is happening. All of this is available for the United States. And so they can't just feed us the garbage mind control weaponry anymore. It's exposed. We have a lot of energy coming from this eclipse directly into the heart of who we are as sovereign peoples of this country, as whether we immigrated here, whether we were born here, that doesn't matter, but it's what is an American, what is the American dream, and this is not it, and we don't want this. So we're all asking for change in the next 6 months. And it's going to be a fight, but it's a fight we're ready for. We're waiting for this revolution. The revolution is here. It is now. Okay, and so from a global humanitarian perspective, how is this going to feel in our lives? Well, I can tell you what. If you've got Aries or Libra placements, this will rock you over the next 6 months. The direction of your life is about to change. And that's because the Lagna of this is in Aries. So again, this has to do with self-identity. It's not just about what's happening in the US. What's happening in the US is what is happening inside of the world, inside of the people of the world. And that is an awakening to who we are. So with all the planets that are in Aries, we've got Mercury, Sun and Moon, because this is a new moon, new opportunity. Also Venus, okay? This is about how do our relationships serve us? And how do our friendships serve us? And what is our core identity? As we walk through the next 6 months, we're going to be looking to see what parts of our mental construct must be deconstructed to overcome obstacles to our true identity. How do you like that one, guys? It's exciting. By the way, we can read these eclipses directly from your chart. So if you want an eclipse reading, just go ahead and book a session and I can do a custom reading. But as a people, the reason why this is shifting our mental subconscious mind is because Mars here in the World Point Yamakoti chart is in the 12th house. And so this is becoming two things: mental shifts to supporting the individual, but also shifts to our governments globally to what? To support the individual. This is what we've been waiting for, you guys. I think since we went into COVID and everything was in disarray, we've been waiting for an opportunity to revamp our governments and to revamp our long-term goals. Pisces are long-term goals. This is related to money too, because Jupiter is in the second house in this chart. Pisces is ruled by Jupiter. So all of this is kind of tied in. Jupiter also aspects this particular eclipse as well. And so you're really looking at, and it's a beneficial aspect. So really what it's saying is, how do we each individually develop security and money? And how do we change reliance on governments? How do we change the governmental structures and the secrets and the lies and the mental illnesses and things that we have to push forward our sovereign initiatives, and this is on a global scale. So it's so exciting because we don't often have so many planets all in one eclipse, right? And so here the direction fully shifts on a global scale towards valuing the self. This is a opportunity for each of us to cultivate self-worth even while our governments are collapsing. Quite literally, this is what we see in the chart. So it's a very kind of hits all of the pieces of our lives. It's going to hit our finances. It's going to hit our relationships, but in a way in which we're valuing our needs within a relationship. We're focused on ourselves finally. It's not all this sacrificial stuff. And then it's going to affect our friendships. By now, if you're an awakened soul and you've been doing a lot of inner work, you've already revamped your relationships. Now you can get to the point where you're communicating what you need within relationships. You're communicating and where you need to create structure, create organization within your relationships, walking those boundaries. And sometimes that's going to cause delays. Sometimes that's going to cause friction, but it's going to be for the benefit of you, dedicating to you. So I think from a global perspective, the time is up for this global domination scheme, right? It's actually coming back to the individual. And, that could also, this is the highest timeline, right? But there is a lower timeline where this results in more conflict across the world. So I think we're going to see both. But because you have to have, in a polarized world, right? In a world where there's extremes, you're going to have both the emancipation of the individual happening on the higher timeline, and you're going to have the wars and vying for control on the low timeline. And that's where you get to choose, because there will be opportunities for you to heal yourself and your self-worth. And so if you take advantage of this eclipse over the next 6 months, you can build who you are, what you do, who you relate to, what relationships you're in, do they serve you, and also how you build out your wealth and your stability. All of this is possible for you, but you have to choose that, and you have to rise to the occasion. And very lastly, I wanted to say that you may have noticed that there has been some solar flares. I did a video on this earlier, and dealing with solar flare emotions. Well, we've been having a ramp up over the last 2 months of all these solar energies hitting the earth. This is historic. It hasn't happened in 15 years that we've seen this. And even beyond that, we haven't seen this many clusters of solar waves hitting the earth. And so as this is the solar eclipse, it's being ushered in by strong solar energies, and the soul is being ushered in. You see, that's the change, is we're about to get a nice hit of soul. And that might mean a lot of disruption and chaos in the meantime, especially for our governmental systems. Some of our governmental systems might see a big shakeup during this eclipse. And yes, it's possible for us to see issues with the electrical grid. It's possible for us to see those issues even globally within this chart. But more so, it's the opportunity for us to grow and change. We're actually being given an injection of God within us. And we're, over the next 6 months, are going to be able to manifest the truest version of ourselves. So get ready. Don't get caught up into what's happening overall, or with the US and the politics necessarily, except for to say that the people are being empowered now, because we as individuals, this chart is almost saying we, the people of the world, are sovereign. We, the people of the world, deserve to have better. And we will have better. And we're being given, this is almost like a Hail Mary in terms of energy, of light permeating the earth, coming straight into us. So what can we do with this light? Well, we're going to turn this light and we're going to start shining it. We're going to amplify it within our heart center, within the truest authentic version of us, which is Aries. Truest version is going to now start shining out emotionally, in terms of self-expression. All of this is changing over the next 6 months. So pay attention to where you give your energy, because this is all happening for you and it might be disruptive, but if you just see the potential of this eclipse for what it can do for you, for humanity, we are going to be vastly more connected. We are going to be vastly more self-empowered as peoples. So I'm really excited about this eclipse. I wanted to share this with you because I believe that this is the revolution of consciousness that we have been looking for. A revolution that will put you in the front seat of your destiny. And it starts now, this change, and it sets the tone for the next 6 months. So come along with me, be a part of the revolution. Let's throw down, because all of this is happening in fire signs. And it's time to let your fire out, to say, this is what I really want, world. I want a better world. I want a better everything. This is what this chart says. It says the world wants a better everything. It wants less bullshit in government, less mental health problems, more healing. So if you have, particularly if you're Aries elements or Libra elements, you will have an opportunity to heal yourself over the next 6 months. So imagine that. Imagine being able to heal chronic issues in the last 6 months that are going to bring humanity into our power. Imagine what's possible there. I mean, I don't even know if I've ever done a reading like this because it's so impactful and I'm so excited. I just wanted to share it with you and let you know, yes, it is going to live up to the hype. And it's going to be an inside out revolution. The revolution is here. Okay, I love you guys so much. Thank you for joining me. Blessings to all. I hope in 6 months we will all be in a much better space, a space we can call our own, a space where this life is worth living. Peace to everybody, and I'll see you guys later. Much love. Bye.